Lieutenant Governor Davidson is the first Alaska Native woman to hold higher office in this state. Born in Bethel, she has fought for Alaska Native social issues for decades, improving access to medical and dental care in rural villages, and as the Health and Social Services Commissioner in the Walker administration, expanding healthcare access for all Alaskans.
Right back at you. I want to first second the land acknowledgement and Qoyana Ruth for doing that. And also thank you for doing that here as well. I can't tell you how much it hurt when you were doing the land acknowledgement on the actual land, on the ground, and to have someone so rudely trying to drown out what you were saying. And it reminded me of how often that happens to our people and how inappropriate it is for someone to come and to profess that they know better. It's just wrong. So I want to first say Qoyana to the Dinaina people for allowing us to be able to be on your land, to be able to meet on your land, to be able to speak on your land, and to be able to say the things that need to be said on your land. And we feel the people who have come before us, who are holding us up, giving us the strength to say what needs to be said. So let me do a proper introduction. That was a very kind introduction. But let me do one that's from where I'm from. Huinga nohara lugua, amitlamakanantlu, yupiua, mamtakitlakamiu, anaka kuilokamiongok, ataka kasawok, Port Orchard, Washington, nakamiongok. Huinga thinket daugua, hai daugua, jalnak higan zaugua. My Yupik names are Noharalok and Amitlamacanan. My English name is Val Davidson. If you ever forget my name, don't worry about it. In Yupik, we have this really handy phrase. It's uzuk. Let's practice that together. Uzuk. And it basically means, hey you. And no one's ever offended. It works. We all answer to it. And even if you're in a crowd of sometimes thousands of people, if somebody says uzuk, for some odd reason, the right person always turns around. It's traditional Yupik knowledge. I'm not sure what it is, but it works. I'm from Bethel originally, which is this part of Alaska. My mother's family is originally from Guiinok, which is on the coast. If you're ever in Bethel, head downriver and hang a right, and you'll run into my mother's home village. And it literally means village with no river, because it's located on the ocean. My father's family is Gasak, or they are not Yupik, and they are from Port Orchard, Washington. I was also adopted by the Jackson family in Cake, and they are both Tlingit and Haida, and I was given the Haida name Jalnach Higgins, which I'm told means noisy lady. And I tell myself, and I tried to convince the rest of the family, that it's only because I have a really loud, authentic Native woman's laugh. The kind you can hear all the way down the beach or down the boardwalk, and you want to find out what's happening over there. I want to acknowledge my family who are here today. I want to first acknowledge my daughter, Daugalok, who is here. She carries my grandmother's name, and some of you were noticing my atkuk earlier. It was one that, in fact, the last atkuk that my grandmother made before she passed. And so my youngest daughter, Daugalok or Alana Nigel, carries my grandmother's name, and it gives her and our family strength to know that she carries on. Also here is my sister, Oyurutjach, Elizabeth David. My clan sister, the family that adopted me in Cake, Liz Medicine Crow. I know you all know and love her. And I also want to acknowledge my daughter's boyfriend, Jake, who's here today. So now you know everything you need to know about me. I'm a mother, I have 4 children, and you should also know that I'm a Head Start kid. I was also a Head Start teacher, and I'm a strong believer in early childhood education. It makes a difference. You know, the smartest person I ever met in my entire life was my grandmother, and she was everything in our family. And one of the greatest lessons that she taught me at a very young age is that if you lead with love, you will never stand alone. If you lead with love, you will never stand alone. And today, as we were walking, and as I look and see all of you today, it is clear that so many of you practice this every day. If you lead with love, you never stand alone. And love really is the key, and it is the answer to many of the challenges that we are facing. Even though hard things happen sometimes in our lives, and they do, sometimes they do, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, but you should know that my ACEs score is a 9. So it asks all kinds of questions. Were you sexually abused as a child? Were you physically abused? Were you emotionally abused? Was there violence in your home? Do you have a parent who struggled with addiction, et cetera, et cetera? And the only one I missed was I didn't have a parent who was incarcerated. And I share that with you today because I know that I'm not the only one in this room with a high ACEs score. And I don't share that with you so that you'll feel bad for me, because hard things happen to all of us, and they shouldn't. I share that with you, and I especially share that when I meet with young people, especially kids who are in foster care, who are living in places that they weren't raised. That just because you had hard things happen in your life doesn't mean that it defines who you are going to be forever. Because according to my statistics, according to the scientific studies and statistics, I should be so many horrible things. I should be an addict. I should be in jail. I should be abusing my own children. I should be, et cetera, et cetera. And I am none of those things. I apparently have a higher propensity for obesity, and apparently I am somewhere on the obese scale, but that's only because they changed the way they measure that. So, and personally, I think that before they do things like that, they should consult with the very people who are in that category. Very rude. So, which reminds me that, you know, as we move forward, when we experience hard things in our life, it doesn't give us the permission to say that horrible things happen and therefore I don't have to be responsible. We're actually more responsible to make sure that those hard things don't happen to other people, whether we know them or not, whether they look like us or not, whether they feel like us or not. We all deserve the most basic respect. We all deserve to be treated with love, and we all deserve to be loved and respected. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. And sometimes we are targeted because of what we look like, because of who we are, because of people who think they know who we are. And that's never acceptable. We know that Alaska Native women in our state are more likely to be sexually abused than they are to graduate from high school. And that's an unacceptable statistic. Several years ago, I was having a conversation with some young ladies who were teenagers, and we were talking about birth control. And in my experience, the people who have children, who are teen moms, are often the teens whose parents really haven't talked to them about the importance about birth control and haven't shared the opportunities of the things that they can do to ensure that they live a full life before they have children. I was talking to these young people several years ago, and we were talking about birth control, and we weren't talking about if they should have birth control. We were talking about what kind of birth control and where they could go. They could go to places like Planned Parenthood. They could go to places where you're going to be able to get birth control even if you don't have a parent who's there. And one of the girls said something, and these are Alaska Native children. One of the girls said something. She was 16. The person she was talking about was 14. And she said, yeah, they need birth control because then they won't get pregnant if they get sexually assaulted. And we know that's probably going to happen. And what was so incredibly terrifying about that moment is she said it so matter-of-factly. She said it like, well, it's Saturday. And when our teenagers know this truth and know this likelihood, it's our responsibility to do something about that, to change that. Because no 16-year-old, no 14-year-old should have the expectation that their friends and their peers and their relatives are going to be sexually assaulted. It is unacceptable. So the truth is, we've been talking about trauma for a long time. We've been dealing with trauma for a long time. And we say it in very different, very unscientific ways. We say things like, be nice to Mary, she's having a hard time. And when we hear those words, we wrap ourselves around that child to make sure that she has the protection that she needs. So Yupik people believe that our worldview is entirely shaped by the experiences that we have. And let me give you an example of that. One time I was sitting in a coffee shop with my nephew. I was drinking coffee, he was not, he was 3. And we were sitting there at the table, and there was one thing on the table, and he said, hey, Nani, which is auntie, mother's sister, literally. He said, Nani, can you hand me that thing right there? It's orange. That orange thing right there? There was one thing on the table, and it was not orange. And I said, Jacob, do you mean this? And I picked it up. He said, yeah, that orange thing. And I said, Jacob, this kind of orange is called green. And he said, oh, Nani, can you hand me that green thing? And I said, sure, of course I can. And I handed it to him. In that moment, he experienced green. And I want us to think about doing things in a different way. And we have to have the courage to do things in a different way. And as we go about proposing solutions to the issues that we face every day, I want us to ask ourselves, are we doing this because orange is what we know, or are we open to finding another way? We need to look for the color green in everything that we do. I'm so happy to see so many people here, and people who are very well dressed for the weather. So as a Yupik, well done. I want you to remember that we hear so many negative things in the news and about what's happening here and what's happening there. And I'm not going to get into that, but I want you to know that even though these are uncertain times, we are not uncertain people. We are not uncertain people. And we know what needs to be done, and we need to communicate our priorities. If you're a person who has not yet reached out to advocate change with your assembly person, your mayor, your legislator, other elected leaders, we need you to be able to do that, because often they hear from people who do it for a living, people who are really good at it, who are kind of slick. And what they need to hear from is people who are real, for people for whom this is a very personal experience. Liz Medicine Crow, my clan sister here, says often at First Alaskans, in every chair, a leader. In every chair, a leader. Or if you're sitting on the floor, or if you're standing in the back, in every chair, a leader. You don't have to be elected or anointed or appointed. You just have to step forward or invite people to where you are. And some of you I know are thinking, oh my gosh, it's so hard. I'm so scared. I'm so nervous. I'll tell you a little secret. I am nervous every single time I have to give a speech. Every single time. I am terrified. Terrified. And you know why it's scary? Because we care. It's because we want a different future for people. So take that fear, take that reticence, and turn that into power. I used to think that you should do something even if it's hard. But what I've learned in my life is that sometimes you have to do something because it's hard. A lot of folks aren't comfortable standing up and doing something first. It is really hard to stand there in the bright, harsh light of judgment, waiting for that second person to join you or that third. But someone has to. Do something because it's hard. And I promise you that if you do, you will be joined by other people, because there are a lot of people who are comfortable being second or third or fourth or fifth or 10,000. So do something because it's hard. And I ask you, and I ask all of us to really ask ourselves the hard question of, what can I do to help my community? Who haven't I talked to? Be that person that young people can turn to, whether it's intentional or accidental. And I saw earlier, I don't know if she's still here, but I wanted to acknowledge, and I have my reading glasses on so I can't see you in the back, if Janie Leask is still here. I know she was here earlier. I don't think she's here right now. But she was an adult who was there for me when I was in high school. And she went out of her way as I traveled with the AFN board to make sure that I was comfortable and to make sure that the young person's voice was heard, because it was missing at that point. Hold each other up. Be good to each other. Commit to being good to each other, because I guarantee you there is a long line of people who will not miss the opportunity to say a harsh word, to be mean. People say and do the most unfortunate things when they are feeling small and insecure. Don't be that person. I learned a long time ago when I worked on the Dental Health Aid Therapy Project that people will do the most amazing things under the most impossible of conditions. People will do the most amazing things under the most impossible conditions as long as they have the right reasons. Children and families are always the right reasons. And the truth is, women are the key. We're the ones who make things happen. It helps that we're a little stubborn. It also helps that we're so often right. So I want to just say, thank you all so much for the amazing work that you do every day on behalf of women, on behalf of children, on behalf of our families, to make sure that our Alaska reflects who we are as people, and that we lead with love in everything that we do. Oyana.